Welcome to the Art Lady channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do this really adorable octopus. Now I did this with my students a few weeks back and they were grades 1st grade through 5th grade, and I did them with 1 day's class rotation, and every grade level was really successful and I really enjoyed the results of them, and I'm going to show you some of them in a minute. The first thing we did after we painted the background is we decided where to place our octopus. You could put it to the very left, as you see here. You might want to put it to the right, on the right side, or center it. Many of my students chose to center their octopus. I'm going to show you some examples here of what they did. This is my 1st grade example here, and that would be ages 6. And this is another 1st grade example, and you can see this is the first step we're going to be doing, is the background, and you can see how each of the kids chose to do a little bit different values in their background. And we also sponge painted. I had some sponges out as well, but I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. I just want to get through this real quick. Here's an example of a 2nd grader, and their octopus was kind of put on the side here. You can see it's not straight up and down like this 1st grader's here. It's positioned a little bit to the side, so you might want to think of that composition. That's kind of interesting too. I like that. And I kind of like the way they use some caps and just dipped the caps in paint to make representations of bubbles behind. So you might want to put that in your painting as well. And then this is a 4th grade student's example here. And they're about 8 years old in 4th grade. And we had some spiral stamps after we painted our background. So here's an example of spiral. And then here is another 4th grade example with spirals, and then you can see how they separated their colors here. They chose to do just bands of color instead of blending smooth. So that's up to you how you're going to decorate your backgrounds, and I'll just show you a quick background, how to do a background very quickly in a minute. And this background's more blended, and you can see how most of the kids chose to put them in the center. But it's up to you on your composition of your octopuses. Here's an example of an octopus that's to the very, very right for the composition. Oops, let's see if I can slide this over a little to see the whole octopus. And you see how when it's to the right, some of the sides legs kind of get, shortened. But then you might want to have, larger fish coming through, him catching fish. So it's up to you. And then here's another center example here. But let's go ahead and get started. I first start off, and we're using tempera paint. I first start off with my kids. We start off with some larger brushes, and I water down the tempera a bit to do a background color. And we basically fill this using horizontal lines or horizontal brush strokes. And I'm just going to do it very quickly, horizontally. I want it kind of thin so it dries pretty fast. That way we're able to paint right on top in 1 day, or to do some kinds of texture or pattern in the background in 1 day. I'm going to put some purple streak over here and just blend it in. So back and forth horizontally. I have the kids use the brushes pretty close to the metal so they can have some full brush control. And smooth, we make sure we don't leave any puddles. And so here's just a simple, almost plain blue background. I added a little bit of purple streak to it, but not too much. And it's a lighter value. Actually, it's almost more of a medium value blue. It's almost a medium value, but light to medium values work good for backgrounds, depending on what you're looking for. Here's the example of the 4th grader who did, a little bit of the bands in the background. All right, and we let that dry a little bit. If you want to do some sponging, you can see how we took some cardboard and cardboard stamped these little coral here, or you can hand paint in if you want to, some coral in the background, like you see here. And you can do all that. I usually do that with my students in one day. And now I'm going to show you how we went and did the octopus. We start out in where you want to place it. Either you want to go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, or in the center. I'm just going to show you in the center. You're going to draw a number 1 where you're going to place the actual octopus head. And then from there, I make a very small T top. So it's almost like the letter T. And then I round this down, and I'm rounding this down on this side. So round the top, bring it to the point. And then give a little round shape to the bottom. And notice my fingers are near the metal. And when I teach my students this, we hold our brush upright straight and do strokes that are nice and even and smooth. And we don't want to leave any bubbles behind. You want to go slow and let the hairs drag behind so your edges are nice and clean. And from there, what we do is we start in on these gorgeous curving lines. And so imagine this in your mind first as you're going to do it. So I'm going to plan this out as artists do. I want the curve, the tentacle, to come up and around here, down, and meet. And they come off of, I show my students this with like 2 number 1s, 1, 1. If you paint in the 2 number 1s, smooth it. This is a good way of coming off of this. So then I come off of this, up and curve around, and I draw with my brush. Now I'm going to reload the brush, and I'm letting the hairs drag behind. I'll go pretty slow so you can see. As I draw with my brush, the hairs drag behind, and I move it so it's smooth. I'm concentrating on the inner line first. And then when I go back over it, I'm going to load my brush again. Concentrate on the outer lines, just so that I have nice, smooth, clean edges. And that's important for craftsmanship in art. Now, as I get to the end of the tentacle, it's going to get skinnier. It tapers thinner gradually. So I'm going to ease up on my brush pressure, and I want to use just the tip of my brush and to give a little thin line here using just the tip of the brush. And then I'm going to give a little bit of a bolder color here. It's kind of blending in. Smooth it out so you have a nice smooth tentacle. And that's how I make my tentacles. Now, imagine how the tentacles are coming out. It can go off the page even. Here's one that'll go off the page, come down and around, and imagine it going off the page. Say if your page ended where my white line is here, and then just swing back around and come back on. So you have the continuation coming back into your composition. I'm going to end with a curve, coming back, smoothing my edges. And that's how you would do. Here's the imaginary one. This would be, say, the table here. This is where my paper will end right here. And then that's how I would do all of my tentacles. Let me do them very fast for you to see. I want one tentacle maybe curving up and around, coming back from here. Now, we know that octopuses have 8 tentacles. Smooth the edges. But as an artist, you don't have to represent all 8. You don't have to show all 8. Sometimes your picture, you don't have enough room for it in your composition. Sometimes in the composition, you don't see the tentacles that are behind the octopus. So don't worry if you don't have room for all 8. Just worry about the beautiful, graceful, curving lines of the octopus. And this creates great movement in a painting or picture because the tentacles are curving and they draw your eye from the center of the octopus out and around. And this is where then the artist can put something interesting maybe in the arms of the octopus. So I like that composition there, the way that swings up and around. Now I'm going to work down here, coming down. Now I'll put a little bit, as I'm overlapping this one, I'm going to get a little bit of a darker value here because it's going to go on top of that one there. And then this is going to come up, around, and go just right off the composition. And remember, they're thicker where they're near the center of the octopus. Now, some kids like to put octopus eyeballs. You can have the eyeballs or just leave them plain. And an octopus eyeballs are right in this area here, and they're kind of bulgy. They're in the lower area. And you can put them in or just make kind of a bulge here for an eyeball. And then on this side, I'll do it with a little bit of dark value. And then I'll just blend that in, because the eye will bulge out and leave a shadow behind. Now let me get a little light on top here. Just put a little bit of a lighter bulge here. And I'm not going to add a lot of detail in here. I'm going to keep it kind of realistic. When they tend to do the eyeballs, it tends to look more cartoony. And that depends on the look you're looking for. But I kind of like just those eyeball bulges like that. Now, you can put the little suctions on the octopus in a darker value color or a contrasting color. My students, here's the 4th grade example. The little suctions here we did in just a darker value. And we also added some texture on the top with a sponge, you can see here. So if you want to add some texture up there for interest, you can. And then we just print, press, lift up the little suctions. Now, you don't see the suctions on the whole thing. You only see it on, depending on how the curve is of the octopus's tentacles. Most of the time you just see it on the bottom edges, and then depends on the view of the octopus. I don't tend to put them a lot up in here. And you don't need to do it on all of them, maybe just a few here. Usually on the undersides, and then this would be the underside on here as it turns. And this gives a little bit of texture too. We just press, dip, press to get our little tentacles. And that's about how you create your octopus. And it's up to you then, once you have your octopus made, you can start putting in some fun things in the background. Here I put in a little jellyfish. And then over here I put in a little school of fish, all in the same values as my octopus. And in the background, to show depth, I did the coral a little bit darker. And then you can see how I've dotted on little texture just by using the brush and dotting and dabbing right into the paint. And it gives a nice texture. And there we have our really fun octopus. I hope you enjoy it. If you like it, like the video, subscribe. Be sure you let me know in the comments how you do. And happy painting.